Hello everyone, welcome to the USTAR TAP Fiscal Year 18 Spring Webinar. My name is Andrew Sweeney. I'm the Emerging Tech Lead here at USTAR, which means that I help manage some of the projects that are awarded and I help oversee the application process. So I'm going to be walking through today how to apply to the program, some things you need to know, and then running through how to use the grant portal. Some things to note just from the outset. One, this recording or this webinar is being recorded. So if you have any questions afterwards or you want to revisit parts of this, we're going to post it on our website hopefully within 24 to 48 hours. The other thing is that if you look up here on the left, we've got this chat box. If you have questions throughout the presentation, just type them and put them in the chat box and we'll try to get to them towards the end of the presentation. Okay. So I'm just going to start with an overview of USTAR, overview of the program, and then we'll dive into some of the particulars of the application. USTAR is an economic development agency that focuses on technology development. So the idea behind USTAR is that we'll help you create a technology, commercialize it so that it can turn into a product. You can build a business around that product that then hires people and generates revenue, thereby increasing the economy of the state. So we do that through a number of key priorities that are listed here on the right, and I encourage you to look at those in due time. This slide just goes over what we see as necessary components to Utah's innovation ecosystem. The idea of this slide is that there's no one part that leads to technology development, but in fact, a number of factors that each need to be carefully considered and supported. So the way that we support the innovation ecosystem is a three-pronged approach. We have competitive grant programs, one of which is TAP, which is the point of this webinar. And then we also have some technology entrepreneur services, as well as about 40 world-class researchers that we recruited towards the beginning of USTAR. So this is why we do what we do and where our resources are mainly focused in our grant programs. What this chart is showing is the amount of money that goes into technology development as a function of the maturity of the technology. So along this bottom axis here, the x-axis, if you start at the origin, you have your technology is basically a good idea. Basic research, applied research. As you get more advanced, you get into product development, manufacturing, and then eventually you have a mature technology. So this line then within the graph starting at the upper left is federal funding in dollars that goes into helping you mature technology. And the point there is to show that, you know, at the research and proof of concept phase, there's a lot of federal funding available, but that it drops off fairly precipitously as your technology gets more mature. And so where that's true, the opposite is true for private investment. So private investment, you know, venture capital, angel funding, that really doesn't pick up in most cases until after you've developed a product. And so this area in between is sort of unaffectionately referred to as the technology valley of death. And so you're likely intimately familiar with this if you're a technology development individual. You can see here with the orange dots, each of those represents a grant program that we have to help you bridge that technology valley of death and get funding so that you can go from federal funding over to venture capital and help you scale up your technology and your business. These are the targeted technology sectors within the state of Utah. We focus on aerospace, automation, robotics, big data and cyber systems, energy and clean tech, and life sciences. And so these are the technology sectors for which you can apply for TAP funding. So a little bit about the program. Historically, and this was before our previous call in this fiscal year, we had 277 proposals that were submitted. Of those, 33 were funded. So you're looking at roughly a 1 in 10 chance of getting funded if you submit an application. TAP is a state grant funding, again, for startups and early stage Utah companies. And your projects have to contain specific business and technical milestones leading to a proposed outcome. So we've outlined here some technical milestones on the left, and new to the program this year are business milestones and what those can include. So for technical, you're looking at research and development activities, developing a proof of concept, product development, and product validation. Again, business milestones here on the right. That's new to TAP this year. Some activities that we look at funding are customer discovery, product market fit, establishing a governance board, and so on. We anticipate having about $2 million available for funding this year, for this call. A little bit on the eligibility. Your company has to be Utah-based. And so what that means is you have to be registered with the Utah Division of Corporations, meaning that you have to be an active, for-profit, and good-standing company. And you must maintain your principal place of business here in Utah. So as far as size goes, you have to have fewer than 50 employees, not have raised more than $5 million in private funding, and you must have less than $1 million in annual revenue. We do have a clawback feature, so if your company moves out of Utah, the awardee may be required to repay the state back the money that was awarded under the TAP grant. And this is all laid out in the TAP terms and conditions that you'll receive if you're awarded. So a big component of this is the reason for being is helping you develop a technology. And so there are some eligibility criteria that focus specifically on the technology. And those are the following. So it has to align with one of our targeted industry sectors, which we outlined a few slides back. And it has to be within a specific maturity level. So we use the DoD's technology readiness level designations. Those are available on our website. They're also available on DoD's website if you just go type in DoD TRL to Google. Your starting TRL, so the technology that you can have upon applying for a TAP grant, can be within a 3 and a 5, and I'd encourage you to look at that on your own and make sure that you familiarize yourself with what a 3 is and what a 5 is. We're also going to have a slide in a couple slides from here that'll walk through what that is a little bit more. So you have to start with the TRL 3 to 5. The outcome of your project can't exceed a TRL 6. Another eligibility criteria specific to technology is that if you already have a TAP proposal or a UTAG grant, you have to have those milestones. You have to have your project finished and approved by USTAR staff before the end of the application deadline. And that's going to be March 20th for this call. So any misrepresentations can result in immediate disqualification. You have to have a license in good standing for any IP at the time of application. If you're licensing out of one of the universities, the company has to have an executed license, or at a minimum, you need to have an option in place with the ability to convert to a license within 9 months of the contract date. And so if you're awarded, we can walk through exactly what that means and what's available for you. So it's really a two-stage process here. The first stage is submitting a letter of intent. This is mandatory. The letter of intent opened on February 2nd. It'll stay open until February 20th at 5 p.m. If you submit your letter of intent before February 13th, or up to close of business February 13th, and it's declined for any reason, and you have been invited to resubmit, you can do that so long as your first LOI is received before February 13th. If you submit your letter of intent after February 13th and it's declined, then you won't be allowed to resubmit until the next call. The letters of intent can all be submitted through our online portal, which will be at ustargrants.org. And in a couple slides, I'm going to walk through how to set up an account and to navigate that system. The second stage is the full application. So after you've submitted a letter of intent, you'll be invited to submit a full application with approval. Those are going to be due March 20th at 5 p.m. There's an optional third stage, which is that USTAR reserves the right to ask you to come in and give a brief presentation. Following these stages, we anticipate award notification within 60 days of the closing date of the full application. And then 45 days after that is what we're targeting to have contracts finalized. So again, here are the technology readiness levels. Those that are in orange are the starting TRLs you can have for applying to TAP funding. The one in green is as far as we can fund your project. So you can come in at a TRL 6 and go to a 4. You can come in at a TRL 3 and go to a 6. But 6 has to be your endpoint. Farthest we'll fund. So a little bit more detail on the application process. So for stage 1, again, letter of intent, February 20th, 5 p.m. The letter of intent is going to include your proposal title, some information on your company, including its name, contact information, business license number. You have to select the technology sector, and then there are some descriptions of the technology, its unmet need, and the alignment with the technology sector. We give you 300 words for that. Then there's also a selection for your technology readiness level. We want you to state what the beginning and ending project goals for your TAP award are. So as you envision what your scope of work is going to be, we ask that you take the first part of that scope of work and the end to give us a better idea of what your project's going to look like. There's a final section that not everyone has to fill in, but if you have any IT considerations, we give you a space to provide some information there. And then an estimated total budget request. Finally, there's a section to upload a completed GRAMA form and a W-9. So to get to the letter of intent, you go to ustargrants.org. You'll be put onto this website, and you'll want to click New User. Once you click that, you'll get this screen. So enter in your information here. In the drop-down menu, you'll want to select that you're applying for the TAP LOI letter of intent, certify that you're not a robot, and click Submit. So once you've done that, you should probably factor in about 24 hours before you get sent an email allowing you to set up your account. It may be sooner than that, but 24 hours is what you need to probably take into consideration. That means if you would like to apply before the February 13th deadline, try to have these account setups completed by February 12th. Anyhow, once you get that email, it'll take you to this page. You'll click, let me see if I can get this bigger. You'll click that you want to apply. If this is not your first time clicking on the letter of intent to apply, you'll see your application right here. So you can click on that. Another window will apply for this opportunity. And finally, apply now. Enter to start the application. And you'll see it's broken into 5 sections here. So the first is an overview. These are the same program announcements that's on our website. You scroll down to the bottom of this, click Next to get to the letter of intent. This is the same information we covered a couple slides ago. You can see some of this information has already been filled in for me. This is the section for your technology sector. You can only click one of these. You can't click multiples. This is a fillable blank for putting in your 300-word maximum for the technology. If you're copy and pasting from a Word document into here and it exceeds 300, so let's say, for example, you have 400 words and you paste in here, it'll allow the paste, but it'll truncate to 300 words. So make sure to review what you've posted for completeness. The technology readiness level, again, this is your starting TRL. And then the beginning and end goals of the project. This is the section for IP and your approximate budget request. Upload your completed W-9 and your grandma disclosure. Finally, you have to select whether or not you agree with the TAP terms and conditions, and then you go to the final page, which is the review page. So this is a summary of all of the information on the letter of intent, through the letter of intent process. A green check mark indicates it's been finished, and this red X indicates that it still needs to be completed. You won't be allowed to submit your application until all of these are green. And even after that's the case, I encourage you to go back and review your application or your letter of intent for completeness. Yeah. So I'm going to switch back to the presentation to finish up the webinar. Okay. So stage 2 is the full application. Again, after your LOI has been reviewed, you'll be invited or not to apply for the full application. This will start February 26th and will go to March 20th. You'll still use the portal through ustargrants.org. So the same process applies that I just showed you. If you have applied in previous rounds of TAP, you will have remembered that your scope of work was uploaded as a separate document. New this round is that we're requiring applicants to upload their scope of work as a Q&A. So the other documents that you're going to need for a full application are a quad chart, and a template will be provided for that. A white paper, and we'll walk through what the requirements are there. Your budget and budget justification, so that'll also be a template provided to you. Your BIOSKETCHES template and letters of support. And we're going to walk through each of those. So beginning with the quad chart, in the top left corner is where you'll insert a picture that summarizes your company and the technology that you're developing. The bottom left is more or less a snapshot of your company. To the right are your technology development objectives. We'd ask that these be specific to what you're applying for funding. So this should be essentially your scope of work. And then the bottom right is some information that pertains to your commercialization plan. So the white paper requirements, we ask that you present these in non-confidential terms and include the following sections. So an introduction, technical strategy, commercial market strategy, the economic impact, and I'd like you to speak to the governance of your company. So graphs and tables are counted towards your page limit. Your references or citations are not. Technical milestones. So this is a big portion of your white paper. They must have clear deliverables and demonstrate forward movement of the project. So we've included some sample information that you could include in your technical milestones. The first is just a brief description of the work that's going to be completed, a timeline, so we ask for the start and end dates anticipated for your project, your deliverable, which is essentially a way of proving to USTAR that you've completed your milestone, and then assign a budget to each of those. Again, the business milestones are new this round for TAP. Some sample milestones would include customer discovery, product market fit, establishing a governance board. You are allowed to allocate a small portion of the budget to meet these business milestones, although you can't spend the budget or request budget to spend on hiring sales and marketing personnel, developing websites, or marketing campaigns or any similar activities. And as with the technical milestones, it's we'd like you to include a timeline and deliverables for each of these business milestones. So some formatting constraints: 6 pages maximum for the white page, for the white paper, 8.5 by 11-inch paper, 1-inch margins on all sides, 12-point Arial font. It can be smaller, it can be 10-point if you're using it for figures and charts, so for captions, 1.5 spacing throughout. And then we ask for all the documents, the only exception being the budget. We ask all of those be uploaded as a PDF. The budget will be, we would upload as an Excel spreadsheet. We'll talk about those in a slide. We are very strict with these requirements, so failure to meet any of these will result in the disqualification. So your TAP project budget. There will be a template available on the portal, and mind you, all of these templates are going to be available in the application portal. The template that's provided has 3 separate worksheets or tabs. It's important that you fill out each of these, and those are going to be the detailed budget, one for the budget by milestone, and one for the budget by fiscal year. Our fiscal year, we're on the state fiscal year, so that runs July 1 through June 30th. We do have a cap on personnel salaries at $150,000 a year, which works out to $72.11 per hour, exclusive of any fringe benefits. So in addition to the cost by milestone for personnel, operations, and travel, we'd ask you to justify certain parts of your budget. These include any private or government funds raised to date or pending. Specifically, we want to know what are the sources of the funds and what was the total amount raised. If these were USTAR funds, again, we want to know the date that you were awarded and how much. If you're anticipating additional funding to supplement the proposed project or the project that you're putting in your TAP application, we'd ask that you describe the amount and the source again specifically. Travel outside of Utah is discouraged, but it is allowed for milestone completion. If you are proposing this, we ask that you document the specific activity, the rationale, and the portion of the budget that's going to be used to travel outside of Utah. And then finally, if you intend to purchase any equipment that exceeds $5,000 in value, we require justification for that as well. For each of your key personnel in the project, we ask for a BIOSKETCH. These are not to exceed 5 pages per person per BIOSKETCH. And in it, we ask you to describe the background and the experience that will lead to milestone accomplishment. And then we ask for each person to provide their technical and/or management contribution to the project. And finally, letters of support. So these aren't required, but again, they are encouraged. You're limited to 3 letters of support. Each should be less than 2 pages. We ask also that you combine all of your letters of intent into one PDF and upload it as a single document. So these letters should be in support of commercial interest in your technology, and it could include people such as strategic partners or potential customers. So here's our review criteria. Your technology evaluation, that's weighted 35%. Your possible economic impact evaluation, 20%. Your commercial market plan, management team capabilities, technical team capabilities, budget evaluations are all listed there on the right. So the takeaway here is that your technology evaluation is weighted very heavily. So make sure to spend an appropriate amount of time there, and that includes putting in an adequate description of your scope of work, your technical milestones. But it should also be noted that between the commercial market and the management team, there's another 30% of your application. So again, I would say, although the weighting here is different, you should put a priority behind each of these criteria. So this, along with all the other documents we've referenced, are available in our program announcement at tap.ustar.org. And then finally, here's just the essential information that you need to know. These are the quick takeaways. So the first is that USTAR can't assist in any part of the application process. That includes answering any questions you have. If you do have questions, we'd encourage you to go to the FAQ portion of our website. If you don't see your question and the answer there, submit that question to tapinfo@utah.gov. That'll make it so that all of the applicants have the same information available to them, and it also helps prevent duplicate questions and answers. And then finally, to be considered for this round of TAP, you have to submit a letter of intent prior to Tuesday, February 20th at 5 p.m. The application window is open now, and if you submit before February 13th, you have a chance to reapply if you're not accepted initially. So with that, we're going to open up to questions. Again, if you have any questions, type them in the comment box here, and we'll answer them one by one. It looks like we have a couple coming in already. So first question, if I'm understanding correctly, the TAP does not support tech companies.
So this is Ivy Estbrick. I'm the executive director here at USTAR. We support technology companies that are aligned to the targeted technology sectors that were referred to earlier in the brief. If by tech company you mean software or apps, then then you're right. We're not funding pure software plays, app development, web development. The next question, is there a way to get feedback on industry sector? If you submit your letter of intent before February 13th, then you will be able to get feedback when we review your letter of intent. Okay, next, if a technology fits under multiple industry sectors, can a proposal be submitted under multiple areas? No, we ask you to choose the one that you believe it is most closely aligned to, and in part of our administrative review, we will look at that and assure that the proposal is in fact in the right industry sector before we send it out for review. The next question, if identical proposals cannot be multi-submitted, what amount of overlap would be acceptable? I'm not clear on what you're getting at. Is the question, can you submit multiple proposals with different applications of the technology? All right. In other words, if a potential technology has multiple applications in differing sectors, is that acceptable?
I would say it depends on the technology development goals, right? So if it's essentially the same scope of work, then no, we'd ask you to pick one sector and focus on that application. If there is a substantive pivot required for each one, then we'd have to address that on a case-by-case basis.
Okay. How many years statute of limitations on the clawback? It's a 5-year, essentially, clawback on the funding. So and this gets at the next question as well, if you move the company out of state or you license the technology to a partner outside of the state, then the expectation would be that you would the state would be able to claw back the funding. Are there restrictions whether key personnel involved can apply in separate proposals for distinct technologies? I think for that, key personnel can be involved in more than one. You cannot be the technical lead on more than one, and they would have to be in different companies. Any other questions? Oh, okay. What is the typical funded request? There is not a typical funding request. The budgets are looked at against the scope of work and the technology objectives. The funding has ranged between 40,000 and I think 600K was the largest award that's been given. Only 6 pages per white paper, but 5 pages per BioSketch. How interesting do you think the people doing this are? A BioSketch is typically can be even longer. We're just putting the limit of 5 pages. You certainly don't have to fill the 5 pages. Companies which are currently getting a Utah license, time frame, I'm not sure what you're asking there. If you need to have a license or an option in place at the time you submit the proposal. If you're licensing it from a university. A question I missed, how many proposals can a single company submit? There is no limit, but only one will be funded, at most. Okay. The next question, is the technical lead the one, the technical lead the one submitting the proposal or the individual doing the main portion of the work under the award?
I would say that's probably up to your discretion. Your key personnel are going to be evaluated as part of the review process, so put your strongest foot forward.
What is the projected date of funding if an application is approved? Likely June.
Yeah, I'd ask you to just go back and do some backwards math on that one, given the I think we said 60 days after March 20th, and then 45 days after that for contracting. So, yeah, we're looking at getting this out before the end of the fiscal year, which is the end of June.
You cut out when answering Carl's question. Did you say that a license is required at the time of submission of the LOI? No, the license is required at the time of submission of the full proposal. The next question, Utah business license. My company was out of state but moved into state, currently applying for the business license. It does not need to be in place before the letter of intent. It does need to be we do need a copy of the business license within 30 days of an executed contract. Any final questions? So one last question. How do you prefer to explain the technology portion? Technical or to a layperson's understanding? It should be technical. The reviewers that we use for these proposal reviews, for each proposal, there are at least 2 technical reviewers, so PhD level researchers working either in the specific sector and industry or in an academic research setting, and 1 industry person working in the specific industry you're addressing. The next question, letters of support, technical people, potential investors, professors. The letters of support should be from potential investors or strategic partners. They should not be from faculty members or technical people addressing the technology. They're really in support of the business potential or market potential or investment potential. Okay, the next question, a small amount of overall funding is suggested for meeting business milestones. Could you expound on what small means? Sure. So the main goal of the TAP Awards is to accelerate your technology and move you forward on that technical maturity scale, de-risking the technology in order to attract private investment or take your product to market. So the business milestones we see as critically important and see them as costing money, but I wouldn't expect to see more than 15, 20% of your budget spent on business milestones. That's a rough order of magnitude of what I would expect. Okay, final questions? Great. Well, thank you all for taking some time. Oh, hang on, one last question. Salary limit, okay to spread out over multiple people. The salary limit is for each person, not total salary for the grant.
Yep, that's right, $150,000 per person.
Maximum.
Annually.
Yes.
Right. Okay. Well, thanks everyone for joining. Again, if you have any additional questions, check out the FAQ page. Look for your question there. If it's not there, upload it and we'll get to it as soon as possible. In the meantime, we look forward to your letters of intent. Thank you.